Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? It is a lovely, somewhat rainy, overcast Thursday morning. We've been making good progress on coffee shop matters, including getting a little window cut open in the wall over there. It's kind of exciting. I realized the other day that my whole impetus behind the coffee shop stems back to my years in my 20s and 30s when I often wished that I could get paid to sit around listening to records with friends, and the DJ chapter came first, which was not planned. It was never something I meant to do or be. Just, I've said before, friends said, do you have a lot of records, you should come down and spin some of them. And so it was never about being a great DJ. It was always just about playing the right music at the right time, because I always felt a lot of DJs weren't doing that. I always felt a lot of DJs were being very self-indulgent and playing often pre-made set lists where they matched the tempos and had everything all lined up, regardless of who was in the room or what time of day it was. That was their set list. And I also thought that was really self-indulgent, really unaware of your surroundings and the atmosphere that you're playing in and the clientele that's in the building at the time. And then my other pet peeve with DJs was always the mashers. And a good mashup's fun, but in a personal setting in a club somewhere, oftentimes they're just painful and excruciating. I think even some of the best mashups get old pretty quickly, especially if you're smashing a great song and with some crap, which is often how they do it. Like, here's a great song, watch you put some crap on top of it. So I often found that process to be quite abhorrent. I'm like, oh, I love this song. Stevie Wonder kicks ass. I'm like, oh, they're putting I Want Candy on top. It's just like, I find a lot of those, that shit just, it would cringe. Like, why are you ruining this song? Why you gotta speed Stevie Wonder up to twice the speed it should be? So your ego can be like, look, I matched it, and look how... It was never my approach. It was never my interest. It's like, let's just play the right song at the right moment, judging by the crowd who's in here and what time of day it is and what time of year it is and the mood and the melancholy. Like, let's let the crowd, the atmosphere, decide where we go. I think that's why I've always been kind of successful as a DJ, because I'm very cognizant of that. Because I'm not trying to approach it from a DJ standpoint. I've never been there to go like, oh, let's look how great I am. Let's listen to some great music together. Has always been my approach. So the idea was, boy, how can I eventually put my records in a place where people will come and hang out and listen to me play my records with them hanging out, asking to hear things like I used to do in my living room for years in my 20s and 30s, before I got family and kids and all that stuff. You don't get that same opportunity when you're an adult to have 5 friends come by, smoke a joint, and listen to a Grateful Dead record. Your life just changes, and I'm thankful for it that it did. I love my wife and my life. It's great. However, there was still always that kind of yearning, like, okay, I like DJing. It's great, but I can only bring 200-300 records to any gig. So you never have that full arsenal of weapons with you. And like, man, it'd be fun to have a place where people would come to me. And the coffee shop kind of got birthed out of that concept. Again, my wife has issues with alcohol, so I've been sober for a couple of years now. And she's been sober for a good year and a half. Bless her heart, thank you. Thank you, Cosmos, for giving her that strength. It's been addiction's a tough thing. But so a bar wasn't going to really be the right fitting. And I'm getting older. I'm not trying to really necessarily do a bar crowd with kids on a regular basis. I could do that stuff once in a while when it calls for it. But the coffee shop just became like, man, I could do little events in there. I can just play records with friends when they come in and sit and chat. And I don't think I ever wanted to do it in a small town like this. But the small town has supported this and made this doable and affordable. If I was in Minneapolis still, this building would have cost $1 million, and this project probably would have cost $500,000 to do. versus the 50, 60,000 that it's probably going to cost here in Elgin, Minnesota to get this off the ground. And of course, it's going to affect our revenues, but our costs are going to be low enough that we're not going to need great revenue streams for it to be successful. But I just kind of realized that, well, this is kind of that fruition of that lifelong want. And I don't think I ever really put two and two together in my whole coffee shop trajectory. I'm like, wow. And I realized yesterday, this is kind of what I've wanted since my 20s, a place where people can come listen to records with me, hang out and talk. And some of the best conversations come with friends hanging out, listening to records, talking. Television and movies stifle conversation. And you might start talking with someone, there's always three people going, shh, try to listen. I mean, and I get that. I don't want someone talking when I'm into a show either. But it's not a great conversation starter when you're watching a movie with friends. When you sit in a room with 3, 4, 5 people and just play music, conversations are bound to become eclectic and wonderful and honest and open. And I just always have craved that connection with people. And so I think that's the biggest revelation for me, and the thing I'm most excited about is during coffee shop hours, it's going to be just people coming in, getting a coffee, and hopefully 1 or 2 people an hour wants to sit down, talk music, and listen to a record with me, which I think is going to be super fun for me. And it should be easy to spend 10, 12 hours a day in this room doing that, because it's what I often do anyway on my own. And the only thing that ever bores me when I just hear not having anyone to share it with or talk to. You know, my wife has a short lifespan for sitting in the record room listening to records. She'll like go listen to a book on tape or on her earbuds and do what she's always got stuff to do, gardening and the like. And so I needed that outlet, and that's what the coffee shop's going to bring me. And it's pretty cool when you realize that's something you kind of wanted since your 20s. Your life kind of helped you create it, even though you weren't really consciously realizing that's what you were doing. I mean, the coffee shop is still a good place, and my brother's like, oh yeah, it'll be a great idea, great business. And of course, I'm going to DJ sets on Friday nights. And so hopefully from like, say, 8 to midnight or so, I'm going to DJ some fun stuff, which will be different from the regular coffee shop hours, which will be jazz, blues, and some soul music. You gotta love Motown. Some of the greatest legends in black music obviously played at Motown and are very important aspects of the black music canon in American history. So I think soul, blues, a little bit of reggae, jazz will be the main body of what I play during the day. And then at night, it's going to open up into a more loungy, I'm not going to call it a club atmosphere, but it'll depend. And I want to do some stuff with some live acts and stuff as well, and DJ kind of around that. So it should be a fun place. And it's just kind of exciting to see it kind of actually coming into fruition. It's been a lot of work, no question. Last on the MoFi thing, and I'm not going to speak about it again. It was never a subject I meant to talk about. People told me I should, and so I did. I never meant to be smug, or I don't have a problem with people who love their hi-fi systems. I don't. I mean, Shigeru Suzuki, my dear friend out of Japan, he has one of the most incredible hi-fi systems in the world, and he'll talk about it when he's asked. But for the most part, he posts records and talks about the music. Ken McAuliffe, he'll talk hi-fi, but he talks about the music. And I don't have an issue with people loving their hi-fi. Don't think of it in that sense. It's just sitting there jockeying the things you spent money on. Like, I can sit there talking about how many records I spent, such and such. I don't think people care about what you spend money on. I don't care. It sounds great, and it makes you hear more. Cool. Share with us what you're gleaning from it. And I would say also that equally important to your hi-fi system and your needles and cartridges and all that is just cleaning your records. Ken McAuliffe was kind enough to gift me this fantastic, I don't even see a name on it. The box is down in the basement. He gifted me this cleaner down here, which I should probably give you a little shot of here. You just, turn this guy here and put a record on. put some juice on there, get a nice juicy berry going, bead that stuff around with the brush, and you clean those grooves out. And when you clean those grooves, a lot of your snaps and crackles and pops will disappear. And there's a lot of things in records when you play a record for the first time in years, there'll be a little speck of dust in there, and it'll like tick, 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 tick. You can often just see that stuff. You just like flick it out with your thumbnail gently. But this brush with the juice on it, which is a mixture of a few things, including some photo solution and alcohol and water, it does a great job in making records that have some fatigue sound much better on any system. And so I would say cleaning your records is of equal importance and will make a sustainable and noticeable difference to a record almost immediately. And it's very, like, there's times I'll play something like, oh, this is a little rough. And I'll clean it and I'll play it again, and depending on the nature of what the noise was being caused by, sometimes it'll clean up 80-90% of the noise. Other times it's just too much surface scuffing that you can't clean a scuff and a scratch, obviously. But there are times where there are surface things that it does seem to make it play through better. So it's an interesting thing, and I think people need cleaners for their records as an essential part of their building their collection. Something, and even new records can benefit from being cleaned once in a while, and it just will give you a more satisfactory. And I think sometimes people get a little over sensitive about what's on a record. A little smudge from a thumbprint isn't going to make a big difference. It's more those 50, 60-year-old records that have been collecting dust for years, that have been in a smoker's house potentially, that'll have the sheen ain't there. It's just kind of dull looking. Sometimes you can't bring that back. Sometimes it's the stylus was bad and it was carving up the surface of the record itself, and that can't really be fixed. But a lot of times, like I said, I've brought old records back to life by giving them a good, thorough cleaning, both sides, and put them on, and you're like, oh, much better. So again, we're thankful for everyone here. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We got some fun stuff coming down the pike. I'm going to work on this little series, I think, called 10-Minute Shorts, where I do little quick bios on certain people in the jazz world. The last thing I want to mention today is we lost Creed Taylor. I believe it was yesterday. And Creed Taylor is truly, I've spoken of him many times over the years, one of the true giants of this music from the production side of things, from the arrangement and overview of where jazz should go commercially. In fact, few people have had more impact on jazz post 1950, 55 than Creed Taylor. And he's in a lot of ways, he's responsible for many of the best-selling jazz records of the 60s and the 70s. And people kind of will slag CTI sometimes, but CTI is great production, and they're fun listens. Some are a little more new agey than others. Some Hubert Laws records get a little bit space age, new age on you, but still amazing players throughout the lineups. It's a who's who of great players. But going back to his days at Bethlehem, where he helps convince Gus Wilde to take Bethlehem in a stricter jazz direction. He oversees some of the great early Bethlehem sessions, goes to ABC Records, where he has a big pull there, produces some of the most important ABC jazz records in the late 50s, and convinces ABC to launch Impulse, which he directs for the first year before he splits, in part because I feel like Coltrane wasn't exactly what he bargained for. He wanted My Favorite Things Coltrane, and with Duke Ellington and Johnny Hartman, he didn't really want the Village Vanguard and some of the other stuff that Coltrane was going to do. And then he gets the opportunity to go to Verve Records when MGM buys Verve from Norman Granz, and he brings his gatefold art direction, his lush productions, his commercial viability. He takes any of the racial tension and just tension is the best word, out of the music, and makes it much more coffee table, lounge jazz, especially when you get to those Verve records from 62, 63, 64. Some of those records, especially with like Cal Tjader, Kai Winding, even some of the Count Basie stuff, which still swings, but there's commercial oversight, the Jimmy Smith stuff, the Wes Montgomery stuff, California Dreaming by Wes Montgomery. It's a little bit easy listening, but it's still great and really well produced and still has great playing on it. And then, of course, he leaves Verve in the late 60s, goes to A&M, and A&M eventually he produces CTI, party with Motown. And in the 70s, he makes that great canon of CTI music. And I'm sure he was involved in the music after that. I don't really know what he does post 1980. I'm not sure what he was doing. But I'm sure he's lived a great life in and out of the jazz world for most of his career. And boy, when you can say you were a part of Bethlehem, ABC, Impulse, Verve, CTI, you have your thumbprints on the backbone of what was happening in jazz, at least on the commercial side of things. You're not going to find much hard bop at Creed Taylor's labels. Some in the late 50s, like that Kenny Dorham record at ABC, there's some good stuff that, but it's not really what Creed Taylor wanted. Creed Taylor wanted an accessible music that could be popular and commercially viable, and he definitely helps make some of the best-selling jazz records of that time frame. From Stan Getz and the Bossa Nova to some of the George Benson stuff at CTI, the Wes Montgomery stuff at Verve, the Jimmy Smith stuff at Verve. He oversees a lot of really easy to find records today because they sold really well. And so a lot of people have Creed Taylor in their collection without even really recognizing or knowing. And he was a strange fella. He didn't really have any training. He kind of just walked into Bethlehem Studios with Gus Wilde and said, I want to produce records, and that's what I'm going to do. And if you trust me and give me some say, I will be a valuable tool to you. And he proved his mettle. He proved his worth. And, of course, Bethlehem wasn't long for this world. By the late 50s, they were in financial chaos. King buys them out, changes everything about Bethlehem for the most part. Gus Wilde leaves the scene, and that's when he moves on to ABC. But love Creed Taylor. He's a really important character. And he's one of the stories in jazz that when you dig a little deeper, and you realize how many labels he was at continuously, where he was constantly shaping the face of the music for the masses to consume. You just really realize when you get that deep into the canon how important his imprint is. And it's a pretty broad, it's Rudy Van Gelder-like, just in terms of how broad his swath and stroke is on the face of the music. So, rest in peace, Creed Taylor. Blessings for all that you did. Say a prayer for me. This is a stressful time, even though I'm feeling more at peace now. I'm feeling we're kind of getting over some of those humps of the uncertainties and things are kind of coming together. We've had the electricians in getting their first part done. The plumbers are coming in next week to get their stuff done. And so hopefully we can be open by October 1st-ish. If things come together, I'm looking at a cappuccino machine in the city tomorrow. So a lot of things are really moving. I've been super busy. Been doing painting and drywalling and taping and mudding and pulling vines out of the pine tree that the vines crawled into when they're trying to suffocate. I'm sore like an old man, still playing basketball. I am down 28 pounds now since the beginning of middle of January, from mostly just playing basketball and getting the metabolism circled up and eating better. But I always ate pretty healthy. I ate too much, but we always eat very home cooked, fairly organic, very little mass-produced food. We don't eat a lot of prepackaged food. Most of the stuff we make is from scratch. My wife's a great cook, and during the pandemic, I tripled my kitchen skills. Since there was no longer restaurants to go to, the gourmet that we kind of wanted, the high-quality food we wanted, the wife could already do it, and I could make a few things, but it really broadened my talents in the kitchen. I can make you a pretty mean breakfast nowadays, and a lot of fun, easy meals that are just healthy. And the obvious hope is for someday for us to move this coffee shop into more of a restaurant kind of experience where there's actually more grilled food and fuller meals. Because at this point we're going to be soups and sandwiches for the most part. So anyway, that's update for now. RIP Creed Taylor. Appreciate you all. Take care. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.